Good morning. It's April 15th. I'm Karen Hamstra, and this is Title Talk, coming to you from Marion Public Library, Marion, Indiana. I'd like to remind you to stop by right across from the circulation desk above the new fiction shelves. Pick up this month's copy of Book Page. Find out about, I think it would be 80 new books. It's more than 79. There's a nice article about Alexander McCall Smith in this one, in case you have not discovered the joys of reading Alexander McCall Smith. Truly, he is a joy. I have several new books to show you this week. The first one being a new one by Catriona McPherson, Scott and Soda. Now settled in her little houseboat, moored in the slough at the back of the Last Ditch Motel, Lexi Campbell wants nothing more than to build her counseling business, avoid her mother's phone calls, and, who knows, maybe meet a nice guy. But when she throws a Halloween party for her crew of motel pals, the only single man is too old for her, too wrapped up in a case of beer, and, oh yes, too dead. So, of course, she will need to unravel that puzzle. Here's a historical fiction novel called The Gown by Jennifer Robson, who's made quite a name for herself in the historical fiction category. She wrote The Royal Wedding. This is about the making of the wedding gown that Queen Elizabeth wore. It tells the story of the seamstress who helped make it. I've read 5 days worth of previews on that from the Chapter a Day online book club, and it seemed like a really good book. Here we have a new book by D.J. Palmer, Saving Megan, and it is recommended by Lisa Gardner and Lisa Scotolini. If you like their books, you would probably enjoy this one. Some say Becky Gerard is a devoted mother and would do anything for her only child. Others, including her husband Carl, claim she's obsessed with her daughter and fixated on finding a cure for the girl's mysterious health problems. The daughter is now 15 years old, and I think suspicion probably ends up falling back on the mom. Karen Slaughter also recommends this book, Saving Megan. And there's one called A Stranger Here Below by Charles Fergus. It is a Gideon Stoltz mystery, and this is the first in a fresh new historical mystery series set in America during the era of Andrew Jackson's presidency, and the author introduces the irresistible young Pennsylvania Dutch sheriff Gideon Stoltz. It's in 1835, and a respected judge in the town in Pennsylvania where Gideon Stoltz is now sheriff commits suicide, and Gideon is regarded with suspicion in this. So, of course, he has to straighten it all out. Geraldine Brooks recommends this book. If you like Geraldine Brooks and her historical ones, give it a try. This has a really cute cover. Please Don't Feed the Mayor, Sue Pethick. And in case you're wondering, the dog on the cover, his name is Shep. And basically, I believe this woman out in Oregon decided to run her dog for the mayor of the small town, where they're having a tourist invasion and lots of shops opening, blah, 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 and the dog wins the election. So it's a novel concept, no pun intended. On a more romantic note, Sarah Morgan has a new one called One Summer in Paris. And to celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary, Grace has planned the surprise of her lifetime for her husband, a romantic getaway to Paris. But she never expected he'd have a surprise of his own for her. He gets a divorce. So she's reeling from shock, but she refuses to be broken, and she makes her decision to go to Paris alone. She meets another young woman named Audrey there from London, and they kind of team up and have an adventure. They stay there, actually, for quite a while. And then an author named Robert Hillman has a new one called The Bookshop of the Brokenhearted. It has a really pretty cover on it. Let's see who recommends it. Stephen Rowley, Elizabeth Berg, Meg Donahue, Patty Callahan Henry, Jillian Cantor. Lots of familiar names. This is a romance. It says, can one unlikely bookshop heal two broken souls? And this takes place in rural Australia in 1968. and newly arrived from Hungary. Hannah is unlike anyone that Tom Hope has ever met. She's passionate, brilliant, and fiercely determined to open sleepy hometown's first bookshop. And despite the fact that Tom has only read one book in his life, when Hannah hires him to install shelving for the shop, the two discover an astonishing spark. And last but not least, in the fiction category, Philip Kerr has a new one called Metropolis. This is part of the Bernie Gunther series. Tom Hanks likes this book. Alan First, Lee Child, Salman Rushdie. It's a star-studded recommendation. Now look at how pretty the inside pages of the book are. Wow. There's another look at that one. Let's see. In the night streets, political gangs wander. This is in 1928 Berlin. Daylight reveals a beleaguered populace, barely recovering from post-war inflation, often jobless, reeling from the reparations imposed by the victors. And there's a killer on the loose, and that disarray is what Bernie Gunther finds on his first day in his new job with the Murder Commission. He's been taken on because the people at the top have noticed him. They think he has the makings of a first-rate detective, but not just yet. Right now, he has to listen and learn. So read along and listen and learn with Bernie. A few nonfiction books. Dave Barry has a new book, Lessons from Lucy, The Simple Joys of an Old Happy Dog. And there's Lucy and Dave on the cover. This can be found on the new bookshelves at 818.5402. Dave Barry always writes a good book. There's a new one about George Washington called Revolutionary, George Washington at War. If you like historicals about the Revolutionary War, it's at 973.4102, and the author's name is Robert L. O'Connell, and he wrote also a best-selling book called Fierce Patriot, The Tangled Lives of William Tecumseh Sherman. If you like old-time rock and roll, we have a new book that is called Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. You can get the lowdown on that band. It's at 782.42166, and the author of this is Peter Doggett. And it is actually recommended by Graham Nash, Neil Young, David Crosby, and Stephen Stills. So it's hard to beat that when all four of them liked it. Then there's one called The Unwanted, America, Auschwitz, and a Village Caught in Between by Michael Dobbs. This is about Jewish people who tried to immigrate to America from one particular German village. And I believe that a great number of them were refused entry, except for just a few. And this book can be found at 940.5318142. Again, on the new bookshelf by Michael Dobbs, The Unwanted. And I hope you found something that you think you might like to read here. If not, check out the new book page for more listings. We'll see you next week. Have a wonderful Easter. Happy reading.